Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Nick.
And I'm Pi.
This is our update for Sunday, April 27th, 2025. We're going to unpack quite a bit today.
Yeah, definitely. We'll start with the U.S. economy and markets, then look at a major development from China.
Right. And then we'll tie it together with the latest from the S2 Underground report and key U.S. news.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the U.S. economy. President Trump just left for Italy for Pope Francis's funeral, and the economic news back home is, well, it's pretty sobering.
It really is. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, the final one for April, it took a real dive.
How bad are we talking?
It fell to 52.2. That's down from 57 just in March.
Wow.
Yeah. And, that puts it among the lowest readings we've seen since, the late 1970s.
Yeah.
Really points to some deep pessimism.
Feels like stagflation worries are back, maybe?
That's kind of the vibe, yeah. And adding fuel to that fire are the inflation expectations.
Right, I saw those numbers. Long-term expectations jumped.
Up to 4.4%, which is the highest that's been since 1991.
1991.
Oh, okay.
And the year-ahead expectations are still really high at 6.5%.
And didn't this survey period overlap with some of those tariff pauses?
It did, yeah. March 25th to April 21st. So some trading partners had temporary tariff relief.
But not China.
Exactly. Tariffs on Chinese goods went up to, 145%.
Oof. Yeah. So even with some pauses, the overall expectation is still high inflation.
Right. Which makes sense,
Yeah.
The survey director, Joanne Toole, she pointed out that people are pretty gloomy about the job market.
Less income growth expected.
Weaker income growth, yeah.
Yeah.
And that obviously hits spending plans. The data backs it up. About 2/3 of people think their inflation-adjusted income will actually drop next year.
2/3. That's a lot.
It is. And almost as many expect unemployment to rise.
Is this hitting specific groups, or is it widespread?
It seems pretty broad-based. The report says sentiment declined across demographics, income levels, even political groups. So it's not just one segment feeling anxious.
And this anxiety is showing up in the corporate world too, right? Earnings calls. Oh, absolutely. Tariffs were apparently mentioned in something like over 90% of Q1 earnings calls.
90%.
Yeah. And get this. The word recession popped up in 44% of those calls.
44%. Wasn't that number tiny just last quarter?
Tiny. Less than 3% in Q4 of 2024. So that's a huge jump. A real shift in how businesses are seeing the next year or so.
Are we seeing concrete examples of tariff impacts yet?
Definitely. Look at Procter & Gamble. They're estimating maybe $1 to $1.5 billion in extra costs annually because of tariffs.
Billion with a B.
And their plan, price hikes. The CEO, John Miller, basically said it flat out. Tariffs are inherently inflationary.
No kidding. So this trade war is really forcing companies to change how they operate.
Fundamentally, take Apple, for instance. Reports are they're speeding up plans to shift all U.S.-bound iPhone final assembly to India.
All of it by next year.
That seems to be the accelerated goal, yeah. They want to double output there, maybe over 60 million units a year just for the U.S. market.
60 million. What percentage of their total sales is that, roughly?
Well, in 2024, they shipped about 232 million iPhones globally. So 60 million would be around 28% of that total. Just for the U.S., assembled in India. Target is end of 2026 for that full capacity.
That's a massive shift. But they still need parts from China, right?
Oh, absolutely. China's still crucial for components. They'll likely ship pre-assembled parts to India for that final step. But it's about avoiding those final assembly tariffs.
And isn't VP Vance talking trade with India right now?
He is. He was just there, reported very good progress. And India's current 26% reciprocal tariff enforcement is paused. So the timing works well for Apple.
It's a huge bet, though. Remember how much Apple's market value dropped after the first tariff announcements?
$700 billion wiped off. Huge. Daniel Newman from Forum Group called this India move essential for Apple's growth and momentum, said their speed in reacting to the tariff risk was key.
Everyone's going to be watching their earnings report. And Tim Cook's relationship with the administration is interesting.
It's certainly close, yeah. And it's not just Apple. We're hearing about Amazon, Walmart, maybe stockpiling goods in Canada.
As a buffer. Makes sense.
Seems like it. Then you've got defense contractors worried about input costs rising, medical device makers seeing supply chain issues. Hospitals might pay more.
I saw something about bike prices potentially jumping 50%.
Yeah, that's out there too. Even North Dakota oil producers are apparently frustrated.
So mostly negative impacts, but are there any companies seeing opportunity?
A few, yeah. Some pharma companies are boosting U.S. investments, One unnamed company announced a huge $50 billion U.S. manufacturing and R&D plan,
50 billion. Okay, that's something.
and another called Advances pledged $23 billion in other sectors. So there are some countercurrents.
But the overall picture seems to be rising economic anxiety and a pretty uncertain path ahead for the U.S.
That sums it up well, yeah. Which maybe brings us to China. There's been a pretty significant development there.
Right, let's shift focus. What's happening in China?
Well, amid all the rising tensions in the South China Sea, China reportedly test-fired a non-nuclear hydrogen bomb.
Okay, hang on. A non-nuclear hydrogen bomb. How does that work? What does that even mean?
It's advanced physics, basically. Instead of nuclear fission splitting atoms like in traditional nukes, this likely involves nuclear fusion, like the sun.
Fusion.
Yeah. The test apparently created a fireball hotter than 10,000 degrees Celsius. It suggests they've potentially mastered the engineering to harness fusion power in a way that could be miniaturized, maybe even weaponized, but without using fissile material like plutonium or uranium.
So the destructive power could be immense, but technically it's not a nuclear weapon under current definitions.
Precisely. And that's the key point. These kinds of non-nuclear fusion devices, they fall outside existing treaties like the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Meaning they could develop something with near nuclear destructive force without violating those treaties.
That seems to be the implication. It avoids triggering the automatic red lines and potential retaliation associated with traditional nuclear weapons. It could really change the strategic calculus.
Wow, okay. That definitely adds another dimension to the U.S.-China trade dispute, doesn't it?
It certainly could. The S2 Underground report we're about to discuss has hinted that maybe China is looking at the trade war through a more military or strategic lens anyway.
Right, not just economics.
Exactly. So this kind of technological demonstration, maybe it fits into that broader strategic picture. It suggests they might be playing a different game than the U.S. thinks they are.
Okay, let's bring in that S2 Underground Intel update then. This covers April 20th to the 26th. What's the global overview?
Well, domestically in the U.S., S2 highlights ongoing concerns around immigration issues, specifically mentions arrests of judges who allegedly helped illegal operations.
We'll circle back to those judge arrests later, I think.
Yeah, they show up in the Kinetic Tracker, too. Diplomatically, the focus is still on Ukraine. Trump met Zelensky at the Pope's funeral, and there's a U.S. diplomat apparently involved in talks in Moscow. S2 suggests there's some optimism, maybe nearing the final stages, but peace is still uncertain.
Right. Anything on Iran or Yemen?
Nothing major on Iran reported. Yemen, the conflict grinds on. The U.S. keeps losing drones there.
Still.
Yeah. And there are some local rumors S2 picked up that the actual recognized Yemeni government is trying to fight the Houthis, maybe with some passive U.S. or Saudi support, but it's limited. And the Houthis still control the main areas.
Okay. And the Far East? China.
S2 basically echoes what we were just saying, this idea that the U.S. and China might be talking past each other, U.S. focused on economics.
While China's thinking more strategically, possibly militarily.
That's the suggestion. And S2 reiterates how hard it is to get reliable economic numbers out of China, which just adds to the uncertainty.
Got it. What about India and Pakistan? Kashmir.
That situation looks bad.
Ah.
S2 says the diplomatic relationship is worse now than even in 2019.
Worse than 2019. That was pretty tense.
Exactly. There was a terror attack in Pahogam, a resort town. Government sources claim 26 dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And of course, conflicting claims of who did it. Pakistan is calling it a false flag operation.
Standard playbook, unfortunately. What's the fallout?
Both countries have closed borders, though there are some exceptions for Sikh pilgrims. Airspace closed to commercial flights, visas canceled.
They've ordered citizens to return home, too, didn't they?
They have. S2 doubts those deportation orders will be fully carried out, but the signal is clear. Border guards are apparently trading rifle fire regularly.
Any actual escalation beyond potshots?
Well, this is serious. S2 reports India has shut sluice gates on maybe 12 to 18 rivers flowing into Pakistan.
Shut the water off.
Yeah. Could impact something like 80% of Pakistan's irrigation water. Huge potential impact. Pakistan is vowing retaliation.
Water wars. That's a terrifying prospect. Any casualties from the military actions?
Only one reported, an Indian casualty from an Indian Air Force drop tank malfunction, not direct combat. S2 describes the current fighting as sort of standard Third World warfare tactics. Shelling empty areas, flying jets over their own towns for show, soldiers shooting at each other from way too far away to hit anything.
Lots of noise, signifying.
Maybe not much direct impact yet. Despite reports of fierce fighting in Kashmir the last couple of days, S2 says no actual casualties have been reported there.
But the tension is spilling over elsewhere.
Yeah, diaspora communities are reacting. Riots reported outside the Pakistani and Indian embassies in London.
Okay, so high tension, dangerous moves like the water shutoff, but maybe not full-scale conflict just yet. What about strategic movements, U.S. Navy?
No change there. Truman carrier groups in the Red Sea, Carl Vinson in the Gulf of Aden, Nimitz in the Pacific. Standard posture.
Any other major naval movements?
Yes, the Indian aircraft carrier Vikran is reportedly off the coast of Pakistan.
Okay, that's definitely a signal. Likely doing drills related to the border tension.
Almost certainly, yeah. Projecting power right there.
All right, let's shift to the S2 Kinetic Activities Tracker for the U.S. over the past week. What's been happening?
Okay, focusing on New York City first, specifically Manhattan.
Right.
Some vandalism at Trump Tower spray painting reported.
Hmm.
Ongoing protests on Billionaires Row outside Bill Ackman's apartment. S2 calls it a kind of siege-like effort.
Interesting phrasing.
And a Tesla showroom in Midtown got vandalized. The messaging was apparently a mix anti-Musk, climate stuff, anti-Trump stuff, all bundled together.
Yeah, you see that a lot now. Protest movements combining different issues.
Exactly. S2 notes that trend. Sometimes even conflicting issues get merged.
Okay, outside NYC, Northeast.
New Jersey, the Jones Road wildfire. It's about 60% contained now.
Wildfire. What caused it?
Arson. S2 says one person, Joseph Kling, has been arrested.
Arson. Was anything critical threatened by the fire?
There was some concern because the old defunct Oyster Creek nuclear power plant is in the fire zone.
Oh, right.
But firefighters apparently prioritized protecting that site, and S2 says there was no serious danger to it.
Okay, good. Midwest.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A Milwaukee County judge was arrested. Federal charges.
Another judge. What for?
Obstruction of justice.
Oh.
The allegation is she helped an illegal alien escape federal custody from her courtroom.
From the courtroom.
Ow! According to the report, the person had been arrested on local assault charges. Then a federal warrant popped up. The judge allegedly went off on the federal agents, took the defendant into her chambers, allowed him to escape out another door, and there was apparently even a foot chase.
Wow. That's quite a scene.
Yeah, and then down in the Southwest, another judge arrested.
Seriously, what's going on?
This one is Judge Jose Luis Quino, also known as Joel Cano, and his wife. Federal charges again.
And the charges.
Aiding and abetting an illegal alien. This person was apparently staying at their house.
Okay.
And significantly, the report says this individual was a known member of something called TDA, and neighbors reported seeing him handling firearms provided by the judge.
Firearms. Okay, that adds another layer. The S2 thinks there might be more to it.
They speculate there might be other reasons for the arrest beyond just the harboring charge, yeah. Possibly related to that TDA affiliation or the firearms.
Anything else from S2?
Just a quick note that their GhostNet monitoring apparently had a very good week, lots of interesting intel gathered, and they're planning to start mapping that data.
Okay, so pulling all this together, it's a complex picture.
Definitely. You've got this real economic anxiety building in the U.S., driven hard by the trade war and inflation fears. Then you have these major geopolitical hotspots heating up, the whole U.S.-China dynamic shifting maybe with that non-nuclear tech.
And India-Pakistan looking really dangerous again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And layered over all that are these domestic U.S. issues, the economy, the immigration debate boiling over into these judge arrests, the protests, the arson. It's all interconnected.
It really feels like a lot of pressure points converging at once.
It does. Which leads to maybe the final thought for you, the listener, to consider. How do all these threads, the economic stress, the potential military shifts, these regional flare-ups, the domestic tensions, how might they tangle together in ways we don't expect?
Creating unforeseen consequences.
Yeah. And maybe leading to longer-term shifts, not just in global power, but potentially impacting your own life down the road. Something to chew on.
Definitely something to think about. Well, that's our deep dive for this Sunday. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening. If you found this useful, please do like and subscribe to The Deep Dive.
And if you'd like to support the work we do, you can find details on our GoFundMe page. We appreciate it.